instead of looking at your food blog as this like a potential empire, instead of thinking about your Instagram following as, going from 10,000 to 100,000 or 1,000 to 10,000, what if you thought about that one person that you're truly meant to serve? I think it changes the way you think about content. It changes the way you think about the way you post. And it also changes the way you think about how you really show up for people.
That was Brian Dixon, and this is episode number 186 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, how are you doing today? I am so glad you've joined me. I'm Marley. I'm with the blog Namely Marley, and I am your host of the Chopped Podcast, where we are talking about all things food blogging. I'm here with you again for another great episode of the Chopped Podcast. I know this is a super busy time of the year, so I am so honored to be a part of your day and your inspiration to build the food blog you've been dreaming of. Today's guest is Brian Dixon. He is author of the book, Start With Your People. And if you've been struggling lately to find that motivation to keep up with your blog and all the things that are related to it, you are going to love this discussion. Because Brian is talking about transitioning your focus to becoming a mission-based blog. I feel like we can easily get some, in business, we call it scope creep, but let's call it mission creep for today's discussion's purposes. But we get mission creep, right? Like somehow we get bogged down with these other ancillary goals, like, I've got to have this many Instagram followers, or I've got to have these things happening that other people are doing that I'm not. And those things can really drag you down. So Brian is really here to talk about becoming that mission-based blogger. What does that mean? It means moving past worrying about all those things and all those, like I say, how many people are following you on Instagram, to understanding your audience and delivering content that answers their questions. Isn't that why we started our blog in the first place? If you think about the very spark, the moment you thought, ooh, I'd like to start a food blog. Can you see where you had that goal of helping people create better recipes? Or maybe you wanted to do easy recipes, or maybe you have gluten-free, or there's some specific niche that you really work really well in. You wanted to share that with people. Brian is here to help us reignite that spark. Now, I hate it when people make statements like, just listen to your audience to get, or create better content to have the best blog possible. And I feel like that's so general and it's not very helpful. But I love that Brian goes into the details, and our conversation really gets into how can we make that happen? How can I better understand my audience? Brian has this down to an art and a science, and he's sharing information on how to go about really understanding your audience. But we also go into finding that great work-life balance. And in fact, Brian calls it work-life integration. I love his advice about creating a finish line, because I think as food bloggers, we can work 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year. Am I right? You know how it goes. And so that means you have to create some boundaries around your work. And Brian recommends creating what he calls a finish line that you can push toward and work really hard, and you can communicate with the people in your life. Hey, I am working towards this goal. Maybe it's the end of the year. This is a busy quarter for food bloggers, so we're really pushing hard right now. And you have that conversation with the people around you. And so everybody's on board with the fact that, hey, you're going to be working really hard for a while. But then you need to have something that happens when you cross that finish line, some kind of way of acknowledging that you just did 3 months of hard work and you're taking a break. Maybe it's for a week or however long, or maybe you're going to go to, Brian mentions that he and his wife went to a concert to celebrate the finish line that he created. And I love that. I just think that's the kind of way that we can turn what can be an all year long process into shorter cycles so that it feels more tolerable, it feels more doable. And those are the kinds of ways that you can really feel inspired and excited to keep going. I am so excited about today's discussion with Brian Dixon, and I know you're going to love it too. So let's get straight to it. Here's today's featured discussion with Brian Dixon. Hey everyone, I'm happy to have on the show today Brian Dixon. He is author of the book, Start With Your People. Welcome to the Chop Podcast, Brian.
Marley, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. You have no idea how much mindset has been on my mind lately, and your book, I think, really has a lot to do with mindset, so it's exciting.
Absolutely. I'm so excited for you guys listening right now because I completely relate to your dream. For those of you that want to be a full-time food blogger, write a cookbook, start a membership site, get your course off the ground, grow your social media following. I've done all of those things, not in the food niche, but I've done each of those things and coached people. So I just can't wait to dive in because I'd love to see you guys make progress as a result of this episode.
Oh, me too. I feel all of that for the people listening, and I'm also selfishly thinking of it for myself as well, because I just love, honestly, I love talking to experts because I feel like oftentimes, and I say this so much on this show, that we're all out here like banging our head against the wall, trying to figure this stuff out individually. And the more that we
Yes.
can learn from people like you who have talked with a number of different entrepreneurs, I
Mhm.
mean, that's just so beneficial.
Absolutely. They say success leaves clues. And so the
Yes.
whole idea is that like let's find somebody that has the kind of career and life you want and then just look at their daily routine. Like what do they do every day? So I think that's one lesson right away. And then number two is it's really hard for us to read our label. It's really hard for I actually just talked to somebody a few hours ago and he said it's hard to see the picture when you're inside the frame. And I kind of like that idea. So you have a dream to get your food blog going, to grow it, to really engage this audience, to make a full-time living, to maybe even work from home or have a team. But it's really important to surround yourself with people who believe it's possible and then also have a path to help you figure out how to make a profit from it. So not just an impact, but also an income as well.
Oh, I love that so much. And I really am honing in on that, believing it's possible. I don't know if you follow tennis at all, but I talk about that a lot on the show because I love
Love it.
tennis. And
Yeah, yeah.
the recent winner of the US Open is a 19-year-old, and
It's
she
amazing. I
started.
saw it.
You did see it? Did you
Yeah, I
hear
saw it
them say
live.
how she actually envisioned herself winning the US Open against Serena so that by the time she
What?
walked in, she didn't feel intimidated to be there?
So good. I
I
love it.
know.
In tennis, you're really playing against yourself.
You are.
And in entrepreneurship, same thing.
Yes.
If you think about it, there is unlimited competition, and so I just choose not to use the word competition. I believe in collaboration. That just the fact that somebody is viewing your recipe or buying your cookbook or signing up for your membership site or however you happen to monetize your message doesn't mean that they're not two double negatives. It means that they might also join your thing too. Like the idea that people are just, I'm just going to follow this one blogger and not this other blogger. Like that doesn't make sense.
Right.
So there's a big pie out there, and you're trying to use some food analogies here. There's a big pie
That's
out
good.
there, and we have like more opportunity than ever before. But where we get stuck is we don't know who our people are, and that's what I'm about. I'm the who guy. I'm here to help you figure out who your people are, so you can serve them well, so you can grow your business.
I love that. I'm the who guy. That's great. So what caused you, let's just do a little bit of background on you, Brian. What
Mhm.
what caused you to go into this field? Is it because you have an educational background?
Yeah, I started out in education. I was in K-12 education for 14 years. So
Wow.
I was a classroom teacher, and then eventually a school administrator. I got to start a charter school. And for those that aren't aware, a charter school, the ones that are run well, it's a public school. So basically, it's funded by the tax dollars. So you're not worried about fundraising and tuition and things like that. But it's also run by a private board. So imagine like a nonprofit with a mission that wants to impact the community, but also has guaranteed funding. So
Mm.
there's so much freedom and so much opportunity there because that, as long as you have students, you're going to be able to pay your teachers and keep the lights on. And so I fell in love with entrepreneurship. I call myself an edupreneur, an education entrepreneur.
Yes.
And so in that process of getting a school off the ground, it was a brand new school. So nobody had heard about it. No, there were no students, there were no teachers. So I had to go through the whole process of getting it off the ground. It's kind of like for many of you listening, it's as if you had an opportunity to take your idea and then somebody says, I want to make that into a whole restaurant. Here's a big check. Go do it.
Wow.
And you're like, wait, what? I don't have to worry about money. I can just implement the vision, and my job is to hire the people to prepare the food, to hire the people to serve the food, to figure out how do we get the marketing going, like how do we get people in the restaurant. So that's basically my last quote unquote job working for somebody else because I was working for the board. And through that, I just fell in love with the idea that we all have a message to share and an audience to serve. And that is my mission. I've been full-time online for 6 years now. And I help people figure out their audience, figure out their message and their products. So it's AMP, the amplify process. If those like the 3 legs of the stool of your online business. If you don't know who it's for, you don't know what you do, and you don't know what you sell, you don't really have a business.
Okay, so what's the AMP again?
Audience, message, and product.
Ah, yes, that's nice. Yes, we all have that. It's interesting to think of a school having that too.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yeah, nonprofits, for profits. Yeah, absolutely. Because so many of us get into what we're doing because we want to make an impact. Especially, I'm coming from nonprofit school world, but even you guys listening, it's probably because you love food. Maybe for those of you that had like a health challenge, there's certain allergies, and so you set out to discover recipes that you really enjoy, even with some difficulties. Well, that was a mission, right? Many of us are mission based, but we still need to make money, right? We still need to make an income doing it. Otherwise, it's just it's a hobby. It's not a career. It's not a business. And it's not something that's going to put literal food on our table and also pay our rent. And so I'm really passionate about helping mission based entrepreneurs, because I think you mentioned mindset. There's so many mindset difficulties, especially when it comes to money, especially when it comes to growing what we're doing, but still being authentic. So I love this conversation, and I'm just really honored to be here.
Well, I want to point out that mission-based entrepreneurs, I have this theory that there is a transition period when you start out with a mission. And like you talk about working for a nonprofit, I used to work for a nonprofit too. In fact, I was the executive director of a subsidiary of this nonprofit organization. And our goal was to turn the subsidiary into a profit organization.
Wow.
And so I think there is a transition period that happens when you're a mission focused entity and you're trying to transition into also making money. It's not always easy. So I think it's interesting to talk about like the hangups that can happen along the way.
And we all have them. It's very normal to go through that.
Yes, exactly. And I'm curious if, as you're working with entrepreneurs, do you see some common hangups that they have about that kind of stuff?
Oh, absolutely. There are different sort of levels that we go through, especially when it comes to income. So the first one is just making your first dollar. And there's this transition from being what Noah Kagan calls a wantrepreneur to an entrepreneur. So many of you listening, I mean, let's just be real. You might still be a wantrepreneur. Like you may have a bit of a social media following, but you haven't figured out a way to make your first dollar. And I would love to challenge you. I'd love to encourage you. I'd love to help educate you on like, how do you go from it being an idea to being a real business? And a real business makes money. It's just part of being in business. The IRS does not consider you a business unless you've made $1. Like it's just the way it works. And it's actually, I think it's $600. Like you have to make a little bit in order for them to even care that you're paying your taxes or not, when it comes to your business.
So $1 is really not quite right.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Anybody who's a contractor for us, I have to send them, the tax form when they've made $600 from us.
Yes.
So there's like this certain threshold, and many that's where you're stuck. It's like how to go from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
Like how do I make my first dollar?
You talk about that a little bit, that you changed your mindset about money and it had a big impact. Can you talk about that?
Oh, absolutely. My dad was a professor, and he was a professor in a faith-based school. It was like a Bible college, and so I've got 2 strikes against me. Coming from an education, and then also from a church. And so when you think about like who's really wealthy, you're not thinking teachers and education, and you're definitely not thinking people in nonprofit faith world, So growing up, it's not even something that your parents even say to you. It's more like we just pick it up based on, tone of voice, certain words that are used, certain conversations that are had. We all pick up this, the values of our home, right? The values of our family of origin. And so much of the time, like what maybe worked for them in a different generation or a different, a different decade just doesn't work for us. And then you add in things like personality. I love talking about personality styles and leadership styles. Like you're different, you
Yeah.
have the nature and the nurture, right? And so I have always been entrepreneurial, but for me, it was a way to make a little extra money on the side so that I could go from, the thing my parents were going to buy me to what I really wanted. Others have called that the cost of cool. So, so let's say, for example, my parents were going to pay, I don't know, $20 for a pair of shoes, just real basic no name shoes. But I wanted the certain skateboard shoes,
Yeah.
and there was a $30 gap. I had to go figure out a way to go make that extra money. And so that's one of the positive money mindset things that I learned, is that the things I have and the opportunities I have, the experience that I can say yes to, are a direct result of what's in my bank account. And so often we don't realize the impact that money has, but money often leads to opportunity. If you think about it, you want to take what you're doing, your blog, your food blog, and you want to take it to the next level. Hey, those new iPhones that just came out, that camera just up leveled your entire business.
True.
But it costs money,
Yes.
or maybe you need an assistant to come on and help you with some of the posting and maybe some of the editing that you're doing. Well, that assistant also costs money. So money there's some opportunity when we have money that we can use to reinvest. But also I think a challenge that I've seen, and this is one that I've had to face, is there's this guilt. There's this guilt of not wanting to charge too much, not wanting to take advantage of people. It's often there's this kind of inferiority complex of, my stuff's not good enough to charge for.
Yeah.
So I deal with all of those with my coaching clients, and happy to dive into any of those issues.
I mean, I do think there's some truth to that. You do have to, believe in yourself enough to make sure that what you're offering is high quality, and
Mm-hmm.
then you put the confidence behind that and price it accordingly. And I can see where that it's really tricky for people to get through that.
Oh, absolutely. And here's what it does. It stops us in
Yeah.
our tracks. It stops us from ever launching.
Ugh,
And that
yeah.
is that's a tragedy right there, because there are people that need your message.
Mm.
There are people right now, if you think about it, there are people right now who need your recipe. They need your how-to video. They need your membership site. They need your Facebook community. They need to know that they're not alone, that they can make it. And food is life. Like there's so much of
True.
our energy, our emotions, right? The way we show up for people is affected by food. I'm sure you've heard this before, but there's this concept of HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right?
Yes.
And it's like when I'm in HALT, or when I'm like feeling grumpy, it's generally one of those four, and 9 times out of 10 it's because I'm hungry. So what you guys are doing is a mission. Like the fact that you're talking about food, you're encouraging people in their food journey, you're inspiring them to think differently about food. I mean, it matters so much. Where would the world be without your message?
Oh.
And that's why I'm here. I want to help inspire you to share that message, to encourage the people that you're meant to serve.
Oh, that's so important. And how do you think? I mean, I know you have a very people focused organization, and basically the message that you're sharing is about the people. So let's transition to
Mm-hmm.
that topic for a little bit, because I think,
Yeah.
based on what I've read from your book, that the more we can understand who we're serving, then that kind of helps us have more confidence when we're developing the products or whatever that is that how we're
Mm-hmm.
going to serve them. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, because think about it. When you're about to take a picture that you're going to post on Instagram, as an example, it's no longer for me, right? I'm not taking a picture to grow my social media, or hoping my video that I edited and stayed up all night editing, that it reaches the masses, because it's not for me and it's not for the masses. It's for Matthew, right? It's for one specific person. So for me, my Matthew is Cheryl. I call her Cheryl. She's a 35-year-old blogger. She has a message to share, but she often gets overwhelmed with discouragement because her thing is not growing as fast as she wants it to.
Mm.
And she really has trouble with the tech. The tech just seems to move too fast. It feels like she's reading a different language or she's reading the menu upside down. It just feels like it's not a natural fit. And so she gets really discouraged. So she hops on social media and she looks through her feed and she wants to give up. And then she finds one Instagram post from Brian Dixon and she gets a little encouragement, a little inspiration, a little education. And she says, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to post it anyway. I'm going to send that email anyway. I'm going to launch that course anyway because Brian said I can do it. Brian gave me the inspiration or the encouragement or the education that I needed. So think about what that would mean for you. Instead of looking at your food blog as this like a potential empire, instead of thinking about your Instagram following as, going from 10,000 to 100,000 or 1,000 to 10,000, what if you thought about that one person that you're truly meant to serve? I think it changes the way you think about content. It changes the way you think about the way you post. And it also changes the way you think about how you really show up for people.
Yeah, I really like this Cheryl chick, Brian. I'm just saying because I'm not saying that I relate to her too much, but I'm sure Cheryl is sitting there looking at Instagram and thinking everybody else has got it all figured out, and they have
Mm-hmm.
a beautiful house, and they've got their food photos are just gorgeous, or whatever. It almost seems like why even do anything? But I
Yeah.
love this because what you're telling Cheryl is don't worry about everybody else there, like you call them, the not the competitors, but the
Yeah.
other people who are out in the
Collaborators.
arena also doing the same things. Worry
Mm-hmm.
about the person that her Cheryl, the person she's sharing for, right?
That's right. Well, think about it. The only like when you post on Instagram, Instagram still is a one picture at a time medium.
Hmm.
And so if somebody's looking at your picture, that's the only picture they're looking at that time. If they're watching your YouTube video, that's the only YouTube video they're watching it at that time. So you might not have their attention for a very long time, but for that couple seconds or a couple minutes, you have their attention. So that's how you need to change your mindset. That's what it really means to start with your people. It means looking at the people that I believe that you're meant to serve. And it actually starts with people that are already in your life, people that are already following your blog, people that are already on your email list or already following you on social media, and considering how can I serve them? Where are they stuck?
Mm.
And when you know where they're stuck, then what's obvious to you is magic to other people. So when somebody says to me, Brian, I don't know what to send to my email list, I say, okay, well, try these subject lines or try this content, because that's one of the things that I do is I help people with their email list. But for somebody just getting started, that just sounds like magic. Like, how did you do that? How did you know? But I put in my 10,000 hours, and you guys listening right now, you've put in your time to become who you are today. And that is really valuable for people who haven't put in that time.
Yeah, we have a tendency to discredit that, though, don't we? We think that
Absolutely.
maybe we have a tendency to focus more on the things that we don't do right. And
So
so when we're
much.
trying to show up for our people, we're thinking, well, what do I have to offer? At least that seems like a trend that I've heard.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, just the quote. I'm trying to remember who said it. It's not original with me, but stop comparing your beginning to somebody else's middle.
Oh, so true.
You're just getting started,
Yes.
and that's okay. And I use that. I use that comparison. I think that there's two sides of comparison. The one is the real negative that stops you in your tracks and prevents you from ever shipping, right? From ever posting.
Yes.
But then also the comparison can actually fuel you. But the person I compare myself to is me in a year from now. So who do I want to be a year from now? And then also, who was I 3 years ago? If I kind of look at it that way, like we're recording this 2019. So what does 2020 Brian look like? Well, he's better than he is today. Okay, great. So I got to keep moving forward. I got to keep leveling up my skills. But who is Brian in 2016? Oh man, he there's so much he didn't know. If he saw where I am today, he would be excited. I'm like, okay, great. So that's fuel and that's motivation to keep moving forward.
Oh, I love that. So, what advice do you give people to help know their audience? If you're talking about, I need to solve my people's
Mhm.
problems, how do I know what their problems are?
Yeah, that's a great question. So fortunately, if you're a food blogger, some of these questions have already been answered for you,
Yes.
which is great, because I work with bloggers who just want to be bloggers. They don't really haven't figured out their niche at all.
Yes.
And it's cheesy, but it's true. There are riches in the niches. There is a tension when you focus in a micro, like you go even smaller, right? Seth Godin said years ago, small is the new big. So as an example, one of my friends wanted to write a book about health. And I said to her, "Oh, tell me more about health." And she said, "Well, actually, I want to help people with chronic illnesses." And I said, "Okay, good. Well, tell me about chronic illnesses." And she said, "Well, actually, I have Hashimoto's, and I want to help people with their diet when it comes to Hashimoto's." I'm like, now you have a niche.
Yes.
because people Google their problems. People Google the questions that they have, and you want to be Googleable.
Yes.
So you want your blog to answer a question that somebody is asking. So at food, it's easy, right? Because they're just going to type in, fast something recipe. So, right, fast taco recipe, organic taco recipe, right? Or they might even type in the ingredients of what they have in their pantry, hoping that they can put a meal together. And you want them to find you. And so there's some search engine optimization strategies. There's some titling strategies there. But you're answering a question for a real person. So one of the best things that you can do, especially as a food blogger, is to focus on a specific person with a specific problem. So what I like to do as a real tactical exercise is I like to imagine their life. Like, where are they right now? So as an example, with Cheryl, with my ideal avatar, I think about her Thursday afternoon, because she's a mom. She has 2 kids. They're both in school now, but she's got a lot of things that she's doing during the week and during the day, dropping them off and getting the house ready and, making their lunches and just all the things that she's doing. But Thursday afternoon is her time to work on her blog. Okay. The babysitter picks up the kids from school on Thursday afternoon. She goes to her favorite coffee shop. She sits there. She treats herself. She has a little tiramisu. She has a double shot of espresso. She sits there and she works at her laptop, and she works on growing her blog by writing her 1 weekly post. So that's what she does. And when I picture her in that environment, now I can think about, okay, now what do I want to say to her? Like, imagine I'm just sort of next to her and I'm saying, "Okay, Cheryl, try this." So for you guys listening right now, think about your ideal reader. Maybe it's a busy mom. Maybe it's not a busy mom. Maybe it's a bachelor who wants to improve his health. Like, who is it specifically that your blog or your social media following is for? And that will give you clarity as to what you post.
So are you saying the more granular we can be with that image of our ideal reader, the better?
100%, especially in the food niche, because, if I type in taco recipes on Google right now, there will be a million, right?
Millions.
But let's really micro niche. Like, maybe your thing is you use the special ingredient in everything you cook. And maybe you use a certain brand, a spice or some sort of a pepper or whatever it happens to be. And you become the best known person for this one specific brand or this one specific style. That is where you can have the most success, because you're playing in what, there's this great book called The Blue Ocean Strategy.
Yeah, I have that book.
And oh, you do? Okay. Yeah. And they talk about the red ocean, right?
Yes.
And I can't think of a more red ocean than food blogging.
Just to clarify
right?
for everybody, red ocean is where all the sharks are attacking just this one single fish. And the ocean is red with the blood from it. But the blue ocean is where, there's not all of that attack going on. There's more fish, and therefore the ocean is blue.
There's less competition because there's not as many people that are trying to fight for the scraps.
Yeah.
And so if you're fighting for the scraps of people's attention, they're going to go to whatever's most convenient. They're going to go to, let's just be honest, whatever's better funded, whatever's supported by ad revenue, right? Whatever's sponsored by some big brand. And you're like, oh, like I created this recipe, my recipe went viral, and then some big, network stole it, or they created their own version of it, and now that's the one that gets all the traffic.
Yes.
Mine used to get traffic, and now theirs gets traffic. Like, I've had these conversations with food bloggers.
Uh-huh.
But what if you were to niche down even more, and you were to really serve them? So there's two things you could do. You can go really deep in the content, or you can go deep in your engagement, because those big food blogs out there, they're not answering personal questions. They're not offering video coaching. They're not having, monthly membership community conversations. There's things that you can do to better and more deeply serve your audience. And so, when everybody's zigging, you zag, right? When everybody's going towards the masses, go to the niches, because that's where you can really make the biggest difference.
Oh, this is so great. This is such a fuel for thought too, because I feel like, if you're doing those things, I mean, you're going to absolutely understand the questions that you need to answer in your next post, right?
That's right. That's right.
You're doing the
Yeah.
extra mile. Yes.
Yeah, here's a specific example, as to how this works. I saw a conference coming up for bloggers, because that's what I do. I speak at a lot of bloggers conferences, and there were 16 speakers at this conference. And I noticed that they were all white women. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. They don't have a lot of diversity, but also there's no guys. There's not one guy teaching there. So I reached out to one of my friends who's a speaker at this conference that comes up in like 3 months. So it's not like it's tomorrow, but within their time frame. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, looks like an amazing conference. Can you introduce me to the conference promoter? Because I think you guys need more diversity. And I didn't notice one guy speaking, and I would love to be that one guy. And she's like, oh, I agree with you. I looked at the page and I think there should be more guys too. Of course, let me introduce you. I will probably land that gig because, it's important to be able to address different people. Right. And so in the same way, the more focused you are, right? So I'm a guy that talks about people in your business. There's not a lot of guys like me. And so the more I am Brian, the more I am really who I am, the more my Instagram stories are truly sharing my life and my values and my perspective. And even my faith, even my nuances of my quirks, right? And even the fun hobbies that I participate in, like whatever it is, people will connect to me. People connect to people. Now, 99% of people will probably say, Brian's not for me. But the 1% that say, yeah, man, he is my guy. Those are people who are going to be my lifers. They're going to be my customers for life. They're going to be my clients for life. And that is the richness of what's possible online.
Oh, that's great. And, I have got so much I could unravel from that, but I think the thing I want to focus on is what you said about, you have a unique message, I believe. In fact, a lot of people I think who end up in food blogging or maybe even entrepreneurship in general, they oftentimes come from a corporate background, and oftentimes their corporate background, they leave it for a reason. It's because they work at these companies that are soul sucking and they don't care about the people at all. And I believe that's one of the big messages, one of the big takeaways I took from your book, which is you got to care about the people, not just your audience, not the clients that you're serving, but also your own people. That could be your family. It could be the people who work for you. It's all really important.
Oh, absolutely. In researching this book, so the book's called Start With Your People. And as I was doing some research, I recognize that we all stand on the shoulders of giants, right? That you doing what you do right now is based on other people's work. Other people have discovered these recipes. Other people have invented these cooking methods. Other people have created these social media platforms. We are standing on the shoulders of all these people that have come before us. And so as I started manuscripting the book and really kind of fleshing out what I wanted to say, I went through my bookshelf of, many books, and I pulled down 70 books that were business books that I thought were going to talk about the importance of people in your business. And so as I skimmed through them and looked through the table of contents and was, refreshing my memory of what each of these books talk about, there was not one book, Marley, not one book that had a chapter that was dedicated to family or dedicated to your kids or dedicated to your spouse. So the two most important kind of groups of people in your life, your significant other, the person you share your life with, and the kids that you're raising to one day continue your legacy. Not one of these 70 very well-known books had a chapter dedicated to those important
Wow.
relationships. And I just saw that there's such a gap in the conversation. We live in an age now, finally, we're talking about authenticity, vulnerability, and transparency. But I think in the business world, we're still catching up with the idea that there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's work-life integration.
Oh, I completely believe that. In your book, actually, I want to quote, it says, when we focus on goals and forget about the people, achievement rings hollow. So, you can reach
Mhm.
all of the goals you want. Like if you want to get all the traffic in the world, but if you're working day and night and end up losing your family as a result, how terrible would that be? It would be very sad. Yeah.
That's right. And I know bloggers that have
Yes.
done it. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the message of this book is, I mean, I've been doing this full time 6 years. You don't have to be in any industry very long before you start meeting the most influential people. I've been at conferences and been in private rooms with people that are really, really well known in the online space, and to not get any eye contact because they're constantly checking their
Yeah.
phone, or to hear the drama that's going on at their home because they're so focused on their
Mm.
work, like that is not the kind of life I want to live.
Oh, I completely agree, and I very much like I like to think that the way I interpreted your book is it's a very relationship focused way of working. It's in other words, it's not transactional, like we're just doing this one thing.
Mhm.
It's really more about like how does this impact my family, and how does this impact the people who are working for me, and how does this impact my audience? All of those things matter.
Absolutely. And for those of you that are listening right now and you're like, yeah, good for you. Like I don't know how to do that. You don't know my
Yeah.
situation. Like you're right, I don't, but I have empathy. I have empathy for you. I know, especially if you're doing the side hustle where you're working the corporate job, like you said, sucking your life, sucking your soul. And then at night, you're trying to put this recipe together and try to take the perfect photos, and you have this limited time and you're dealing with kids and finances and all the overwhelming thing. Like I totally get it. Here's one little tip. The tip is to have a conversation before the action. So often what happens, especially entrepreneurs, we're quick start. We want to dive
Yeah.
right in. We get our kitchen set up or get our blog set up, or we want to go live on Facebook or whatever it is. What if we were to turn to the people in our life and say, hey guys, over the next, got to give them some window, right? So over the next 48 hours, over the next 2 days, I would love about an hour that I'm just going to take over the kitchen and I'm going to focus on batching my posts. I'm going to work on, getting a couple posts together, and I just need an hour of quiet time. Can you help me with that? Like, is there a way that we can make that happen? And obviously, depending on your support team, depending on your home team, that might look like, your significant other taking the kids to the movies for a matinee on a Saturday so you can take over the kitchen. That might mean hiring some extra help. That might mean asking a friend who's out of town to use her kitchen. Like there are solutions, but you have to start by acknowledging the problem.
Oh, so true. And I also love, at least I've been able to do this with my husband because he and we do the food photos together. And I'm able to
Love it.
say, like, now that we're adding videos to the site, I just want you to know, I'm sorry. I may get a little crazy because I don't know exactly what I'm looking for here. And I just want you to
Right.
know sometimes I get a little short when or whatever. I don't mean it that way. And
Yes.
talk to me and we'll work this through kind of thing.
And that's all it takes. Like all it takes is just saying, "Hey, hey, I'm feeling a little tired right
Yes.
now," or "Hey, I'm feeling the pressure." For example, I recently launched the book, and for anybody who has dreamed about launching a book, writing and launching, those are two different
Yeah.
things. The writing part is actually kind of fun. The launching part is kind of stressful because you got to be at certain places at certain times. You're constantly looking at your sales numbers. You've got this team from the publisher that's looking at you like no matter what you do, it's never enough because there's always more,
Yes.
and so for me to have a conversation with my wife Julie, just to say, hey, like, you need to know I'm about to go into book launch mode. I will probably be a crazy person, and let's talk about some strategies. And one of our strategies, Marley, was to have a finish line. And this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't do. We have finish lines when it comes to our job, like when we're an employee. But for some reason in entrepreneurship, we don't give ourselves the grace of having a finish line, of allowing ourselves, let me say it this way. We don't give ourselves the grace of allowing ourselves to finish the race,
Hmm.
right? We don't ever say, this is the end of that project. And as a food blogger, there is no
Yes.
end, because as soon as you have a post do well, now you're thinking, what's the next
Yes.
post? I got to get the next post up. I got to capitalize on this traffic, right? And so what we decided to do, this was about 6 weeks before the book came out, and we picked an artist, a musician that we both happen to like, and he happened to be coming to town. I live in Charlotte, so he's coming to Charlotte. I bought some great tickets, so we were close up. We're going to have a great time at this concert. And I said to Julie, this is my finish line. It's two and a half weeks after the book comes out. This is my finish line. So I'm going to sprint, and I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to hustle, and I'm going to do all the right strategies, and I'm going to ask for all the favors. I'm going to do everything I need to do to get this book out. But you need to know that there's a finish line. And no matter how it goes, good or bad, bestseller or complete flop, whatever happens, you and I are going to stand at the finish line together, and we're going to celebrate the effort, because that's all you can do. You never know what the results are, but you can always decide on your level of effort.
Ah, that is huge. What a great idea. And this is really timely right now for food bloggers because this is the fourth quarter, and this is a huge time
Mhm.
of year for food bloggers. So we're really busy, we're hustling, we're doing all the things right now. So I love the idea of finding maybe some celebration in early January that we can
Yep.
use to motivate ourselves to get through this quarter and to know that there's a finish
Yes,
line. It's
exactly.
beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. And it's something I had to learn the hard way,
Yes.
but I think it can make such a difference, when okay, this is the goal. And I just, especially for those that are in a relationship, for you to say to your person, this is going to be a really busy season, but I want you to know, like, I know when it's going to end, and I'm still going to stand with you after it's
Yes.
over. Because let's just be honest, this blogging thing's kind of a weird
It is,
industry.
yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, who knows? Like I've had friends who have gotten the call from Good Morning America. They landed the book deal because they had a post that went viral. They were offered some really big sponsorship money from major retailers because their blog started doing really well. And money makes it weird, and attention makes it weird. And so for you to say to your person, your home team, to say, "Hey, I'm still me. Let's go through this together. Let's be in this together. Let's commit to coming out the other side of this together." I think it makes such a big difference.
Oh, definitely. And that sounds an awful lot like self-care to me too. And I'm just curious, do you
Mhm.
have I know oftentimes we hear entrepreneurs talk about an important morning routine that's both
Yeah.
self-care and motivational. Do you have anything like that you do
Oh, absolutely. Every day. You have to.
every day?
Yeah, every day. So we have kids too, right? So we have 3 little kids, 3, 6, and 9 years
Oh
old.
my.
So we're in the middle of it,
Yes.
which means that during the day I don't have my own time. Even though I'm working from home, there's a couple doors that they would have to get through to get to me, but still, I still hear their footsteps. I still see them. As they're outside in the front yard. Whatever they playing basketball or riding their bike with mom out there. There's really no separation. And so, of course, the morning routine, I think it just makes such a difference. One of my mentors, Dan Miller, he calls it the rudder of the day.
Hmm.
So imagine if your life is like a boat, and the rudder is that most important part. It's one of the smallest parts on the boat, and it's the most important part because it steers the boat, right? It
Yes.
decides where the direction is. So I think an hour before kids are awake, which means you got to go to bed an hour earlier so you can wake up an hour earlier. So you don't sacrifice any sleep, same amount of sleep. You sacrifice a little bit of Netflix, right? Or a little bit of
Yeah.
binging on social, and you wake up an hour earlier, and you have the time to pray and to read and to reflect and to journal and to plan all the things you love doing, maybe even a little exercise, like whatever it is, to get your mind right for the day so you can really show up for your people.
That's great. I love that idea of even if it requires going to bed a little bit earlier so that you can get up early. I do find there's a big difference on the days that I get up early and I get that routine in before I hit the computer. It makes a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you show up in a different way.
Absolutely. So true. And I see that goes back to mindset, right, Brian? Because, like
That's right.
if I have that great, I got this mindset going on, I feel like I'm ready to show up for Cheryl, you know?
That's right. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, you have this level of this level of confidence because you took
Yes.
the time to really get clarity.
Yes. It's like that whole thing that people talk about, and with the airline, you gotta put your mask on first
Mhm.
before you can help your child, and I think that's probably true before we can all we all have our Cheryl, so before we can help our Cheryl, we gotta that morning routine is like your way of putting on your own mask, I guess.
I love that.
Yeah. You talk about a mirror manifesto in your book, Start With Your People. What can you talk about
Mhm.
that a little bit?
Absolutely. So imagine as you're getting ready to, go live on your on your Instagram, on your
Yeah.
Facebook or your Instagram, or you're just looking in the mirror in the morning as you're getting ready for the day, that there was a little note card, little index card with three sentences. And those three sentences were your vision, how you want to show up in the world. So I've got a 10-step little exercise that I walk you through in the book. And essentially it starts with your people. And so it says, do you know how, so my case, mine says, do you know how Cheryl, so because I'm talking about her, right? But it would be, do you know how heart-based entrepreneurs and bloggers struggle with the technology and the strategy to serve their audience well? So that's the first question. So yours might be the beginning of your mirror manifesto might be something like, do you know how moms of children with gluten allergies, do you know how moms of children with gluten allergies struggle to find healthy recipes that are also fast and affordable? That alone could be your mirror manifesto because you
Yes.
already see where I'm going with that, right?
Yes.
So you start your manifesto or you start your personal mission statement with the who. Who is it that you want to serve? And then you answer the question, which is, I help this person, right? So I help moms of kids with gluten allergies prepare healthy and delicious and affordable meals by, and then there's two things you do. One of them is free and one of them is paid because we live in an age of content. So you've got to create free content. That's how you build up know, like, and trust. That's how
Right.
people even learn about you, is through your free content. So I do this through daily posting on my Instagram, or I do this through a weekly YouTube video, which is for the free part. And I also have, and this is where most people get stuck, what is the paid thing? What is the thing that people pay you for? So maybe you have ads on your site. I'd highly recommend, my favorite income stream online is a membership site. People paying $10 a month, $30 a month, whatever it happens to be, for access and for individualization, for being able to ask you questions. That's a game changer right there. If you go from everything I'm doing is free to, pay $10 a month and you get the higher level, you get the personal level from me, 1,000 people joining or 100 people joining at $10 a month, that really starts to add up over time. So that's what the Mirror Manifesto does. It walks you through a 10-step process to create this mission statement. I highly recommend you read it every morning as you're getting ready in the mirror. That's why it's the Mirror Manifesto. And it gives you clarity of what you do for the rest of the day in order to live that out.
That clarity is so important too, because I think, as you have said in your book too, it's easy to become overwhelmed with all the things that we have in front of us. Either it's competition or it's the options that we could be doing. But if I have that clarity of mind, my day is so much more focused, and that it feels so good at the end of the day when I've done all those things.
Oh yeah, there's just so much to do. Like
I know.
we're starting to explore. I haven't said this anywhere publicly, so it's kind of fun to say for the first time. But we're starting to explore TikTok.
Oh yeah.
This social
Yes.
media platform used to be Musically, and now it's like this like little Instagram kind of video app. And we're looking at it and we're saying, okay, it's not just for 12-year-old girls. Like there will be businesses on there one day if there aren't already. There's probably food bloggers that use it every day, and they're like, I use it every day. But I'm learning to be a beginner And I'm learning to look at an app like this and to say, how can I learn this in order to better serve my people? So I think that there's just so many opportunities. There's too many opportunities. And so we need to selectively choose what are going to be the things that we're focused on. One of the things that I share. So if you're really feeling overwhelmed about all the options, like how do I compete? How am I on Pinterest and LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram? And now this guy's talking about TikTok too. Like, what in the world? How do I even have enough time? What I love saying is next year. So I'm going to try that next year. So just focus this year on the one thing you're already doing and just focus on really showing up for your person now. And then next year you can say, do I want to add that? Or do I want to replace that with the thing that I'm doing right now?
I love that. But then, of course, I think it begs to create a list of like in the business world, we used to call it a parking lot. If we were in a meeting and somebody
Yes.
came up with a great idea, but it wasn't the topic of our meeting, we had a
Yes.
clipboard at the front or something at the front where we would actually write down what we call the parking lot. So great ideas to think about in the future. So how about a parking lot for 2020?
That's right. Just
Yes.
say, yeah, that's maybe next year. Next
Yes.
year, I'll talk about that. Next year, I'll think about that. Because what often happens is we go down the rabbit hole. Like we go, oh, I've just heard about this new app and I heard it on a podcast and somebody's trying it and I got to try it. And then we spend 6 hours like
Yes.
learning it, researching it, and we don't take any action.
Yep.
So I'd rather just put it on there and say, maybe you have a planner or you use your calendar and you say, let's put it over there. Or maybe you keep a notepad, and if it's digital or physical, and you just say, that's the notepad for TikTok, or that's the notepad for this strategy. But I'm not even going to worry about that because that's not for this year. That's for next year.
The only thing I would recommend in addition to that, though, is that go ahead and register and get your blog name on there because
Yes.
oftentimes what I hear from people is that by the time they finally do jump on board, someone else has grabbed their name.
Oh, that's a good point. Good point.
Yes. So just grab your name and then put it in your parking lot or your notepad or whatever and and think about it for next year.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So I love the focus of your book and the focus on how we can show up and serve for others. I feel like we've covered so much of that about the only way we can show up for others is if we are full for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder if you can maybe talk a little bit about how we can stay motivated to do the self-care that we need or to be confident in the things that we're offering.
Oh, that's such a good question. I think it's different for different people. In the book, I talk about a few of my favorite personality tests. One of them that I love is the Enneagram.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not.
I am. I haven't done it myself, but I've heard so many people talk about it and I've read about it.
Yeah, it seems to be kind of the go-to one right now. But what I love about the Enneagram is the best analogy I've heard is it's like we're all wearing different kinds of glasses and we see the world differently because depends on what kind of glasses we're wearing, And so I think you need to know enough about yourself in order to know how you see the world and how you're motivated. So I know my Enneagram type. I know my wife's Enneagram type, and we're very different and we're motivated in different ways. So for me, what motivates me is accomplishment. And I love words of affirmation. I love verbal praise for somebody to say, Brian, that was amazing. You did a good job. So put those two together. If I had a banner month, a month of significant income, so I look at a check or I look at the PayPal account or whatever it happens to be, and there's a number in there and it's a big number, and then somebody in my life says, wow, how did you do it? That was amazing. Like that motivates me. But for some people listening right now, you're like, that sounds terrible. I'm not motivated by that at all. I'm motivated by the amount of comments I get, or I'm motivated by how beautiful my feed looks. So you've got to decide, figure out what is it that motivates you? And then once you figure that out, can you have some sort of reminders? So for me, I have this thing. It sounds so funny, but I have this thing called a brag drawer, BRAG, a brag drawer. So my drawer, my top drawer of my cabinet in my office is just filled with what others might just think are like scraps of paper. Like if somebody cleaned that drawer one day, they'd probably just throw everything away because they think it's junk. But it's handwritten notes, it's thank you cards, it's some like holiday cards from people. Some of it's like copies of checks that I've received through the years. Some of of it's like little, cards that I got from my wife on an anniversary a couple years ago. But all I do is if I'm having a bad day and I'm like, I don't think my message matters, I don't think anybody cares, this is so discouraging, this is so frustrating, I take 5 steps over to my brag drawer, I open it up, I look through a couple cards, a couple notes, a couple, accomplishments, and I go, okay, if I did that, I can face this.
That's great. I love that idea. We all need to have a brag drawer.
We need a brag drawer, and we need a brag table. Some that we have people. I talk about this in the book. There's a chapter on your friends. What I'd recommend you're in a mastermind. You're in a group with other people that kind of know your world and that are encouraging each other. Not threatened by your success or afraid of your failure, but are standing shoulder to shoulder with each other and encouraging you to keep moving forward. So you combine those two, having a brag drawer and a brag table, a safe place for you to say, I just had a post go viral. Isn't that amazing? And for them to say, it is amazing. Way to go. Instead of being threatened by it, can really, really make a big difference.
It's huge. And I think we all have a tendency to downplay those big moments. And so to be with people who can help you celebrate it, that's so important. That's so smart.
Thank you so much.
Brian, this has just been so great. I love to ask a couple of fun questions at the end of the interview. Are you game?
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's do it. This is a food focused podcast, so I just have to ask you this question. What is your favorite food?
Oh, so I love breakfast burritos. Isn't that weird?
That is weird.
I love breakfast burritos. And then here's what I do. I make a breakfast burrito and then I cut it up like in little slices, like sushi, like cut it up. Yeah. And then I put it on my griddle with avocado oil. And then I grill it. So it's grilled breakfast burritos.
Wow. And do you have those for breakfast?
Occasionally. There's a little, because I put some cheese in there and, some potatoes and stuff. So it's not necessarily the way I want to start my day, but that's sort of a treat food for me.
Yes. And so, honestly, I absolutely love breakfast for dinner. So that sounds like a good breakfast for dinner option.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. And do you share that with anybody or you just only make it for yourself?
Oh, I douse it in hot sauce and peppers and all kinds of stuff. So nobody in my family wants to eat that.
I love that. That's great. Okay. What's the favorite app on your phone? And don't say TikTok.
Oh, there's a great app called Voxer, Voxer. Yeah, Voxer, and it's like a walkie-talkie that records. And what I love about it is I'm a verbal processor, so I process auditorily through speaking and also through listening. And that's how I kind of perceive information best. And so Voxer allows me to send ideas to my team, but also receive ideas and listen to them at 2 or 3 or 4 times the speed. So. Wow. Right. So somebody can send me a long explanation of an idea. I do this with my coaching. I do one-on-one coaching. And so my coaching clients will send me like a 10-minute Voxer on their idea for their blog. And I can listen to it at 4 times the speed and then I can Vox them back. It's pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great app. I'm going to check that out. Okay. Do you have any time for TV or reading at all? And if so, what's your favorite?
Oh, I enjoy downtime. So I think it's important. We don't want to have too much TV in our lives, but I think a little bit is okay. It's like a little dessert at the end of the day. Yeah. It just depends on the season. I really like sharp writing, like witty writing, especially when it's in comedy. So the one I normally talk about is The Office. I think The Office is one of those shows that you can go back and you can watch, 10 times and you always find something new in it. So really good writing makes such a difference.
Oh, it's so true. And I think it's actually trickier with comedy.
Yes.
It's not easy to pull off, but when they do, it's really great.
That's right.
Okay. So Brian, how can people order your book online?
Yeah, it's on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, wherever you buy books, your local independent bookstore. So we've got it in hardcover and also on audio as well. So I recorded the audiobook and you can get that at Audible.
Oh, I bet that was fun. Did you recorded it yourself then?
I did. It took 2 days, 10.5 hours of recording. The total book length is 6.5 hours. So there's quite a lot of editing that needed to be done, but it was really fun. I recorded it standing up in a little room in a studio in Nashville. And it was, I got to tell you guys, for those of you listening, thinking like I could never make a full-time living, sharing my message and growing my blog, you've got to celebrate those milestones along the way. And it was one of those major milestones for me, being in Nashville, staying at a hotel, walking to the studio and recording, my album, right? My book album.
Yes.
It was really, really fun. So if
You
you're
feel
an
like a rock
audiobook
star?
listener, yeah, it was so fun. So I've gotten really good feedback on the audiobook. And if you're an audio listener, which you obviously are because you listen to this podcast, check out the
Yes.
audio version of Start With Your People.
Well, you have a great speaking voice, so I imagine your audiobook is great. I have listened to some where the author does the audiobook, and I think, oh, you should have hired somebody. But no, I think yours is probably going to be great.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so how can people find you online?
Yeah, so I'm Brian Dixon, and you can just go to briandixon.com and check me out there. I've got a little quiz. If you're feeling stuck, I have a 30-second quiz that will help you get unstuck, figure out what's that one area in your life where you're stuck. And then also, if you really resonated with what I shared today, like send me a message on Instagram. That's one of the best ways to reach out to me. I read all my DMs, all my direct messages. But send me a message on Instagram. Tell me you heard me on Marley's podcast, and I'd love to continue the conversation there.
And you're Brian Dixon there as well?
Yeah, it's a middle initial J, but if you type in Brian Dixon, you should find me.
I love it. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I had a great time.
Me too. Thanks so much.
Thanks to Brian Dixon for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Are you trying to grow your food blogging skills? If so, the Chopped Academy Smart Keywords webinar is a must. Take your SEO and your keywords game to another level. One of the participants said this after the webinar: I feel so informed, so many aha moments. You know what? It's not too late. You can go today and participate in the Smart Keywords webinar delivered by myself and Brandy Crawford of the site Stay Snatched, where you'll get access to the wonderful information that we provide along with the spreadsheets and so much more. Go to chopped.academy/smart today. So did you feel the inspiration from today's episode? I loved it. Brian did such a great job. I feel so inspired. And I feel like this is the kind of mindset that's just required when we have such a tough workload that's required of food blogging. It can feel like a daily grind, but if you use that information to help you feel inspired, it changes everything. So I encourage you to listen to today's episode anytime you need an extra dose of inspiration. Hey, thanks to everyone for your support of the Chop Podcast. I've heard from so many of you all lately, and I want you to know your positive feedback means so much. Your reviews on iTunes and Stitcher make a big impact, and I really appreciate all of your reviews. It makes a big difference. Hey, if you're feeling an extra dose of inspiration about today's episode, why not take a picture of yourself listening or take a screenshot and share it with me using #NamelyMarley or #ChopPodcast. I love hearing from you. You inspire me, and I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to you as well. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.